District of Waukesha's Board of Education Teaching and Learning Committee meeting for Tuesday, March 2nd. We start out our agenda under general business. Stacy, has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now is the opportunity for public comment to our committee this evening. Anyone signed up this evening, Stacy?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next, we're pleased to have a team from Higher Elementary for a Bright Lights presentation, ENIL Spanish Literacy. I'll turn it over to Mark Schneider, the principal from Higher, also Jamie Carmichael, the literacy coach. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Dietz. We're actually going to have Dee Garcia start off. She's the one who's brought ENIL to our district, and she can introduce us and give us a little background.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be in front of you again. A few years ago, we began to investigate the opportunities that we had to evaluate our students' Spanish reading proficiency as they go through elementary and middle school. And through that process, we decided as a team that we really wanted a tool that not only measured beginning, middle, and end of year progress on our students, but actually gave our teachers actionable, standards-based feedback that they could act on immediately in their classrooms. And that's how we found what we call ENIL. It's the Evaluation of Independent Reading. The ENIL is a tool that allows our teachers to diagnose and then also act upon students' goals on a bi-weekly basis. And it fits right into the instructional design, so it's not a separate time or place. It just fits right in with conferring and small group instruction. It is both an instructional tool and an evaluation instrument, which makes it very unique. So we picked Higher Elementary School to launch ENIL, along with our 3 middle schools last year. And this year we brought on Bethesda Elementary School, yes, during a COVID year, but it's going very well. And we plan to bring on either Hawthorne or Banting coming up in the future. So I'd like to introduce again Mark Schneider and Jamie Carmichael to take it away.
Thank you, Dee. As she mentioned, ENIL is this is our second year in our ENIL journey, and we found out some great tools that are helping our students learn and empowering them to be better Spanish readers. So what is ENIL? It's a standard-based formative Spanish reading assessment that is embedded in instruction, allows us to track progress through actionable data in real time using formative assessment that guides instruction for small groups and conferring. It fits right in with our CLM model at the elementary level for our comprehensive literacy model. It really helps support our small group instruction, and it includes conferring, where there's a one-on-one conference between the teacher and the student. It contains multiple resources and tools that support growth and independence. And as Dee mentioned, it's not beginning, middle, and end of the school year, it's ongoing. It's a cycle of growth, and the students are involved in the process the whole time. So students meet with teachers conferring at least bi-weekly, often it's weekly with their conferring meetings. All that is loaded and documented in School Pace, which is a tracking and monitoring tool that the teacher uses to assign power goals, which are goals that students work on. And they achieve those. When they achieve those goals, they're able to move on to next levels of instruction. So in School Pace, the teacher will enter notes from the conferring session. They'll put in next steps for the student. They'll also monitor student reading engagement, not only during small group instruction, but during application time where they're reading independently. So I'll show a brief video of a conference between one of our students, Sophia, and our teacher, Cadell Corridor, who's our one of our third grade literacy teachers.
Okay, Sofía, ¿cuál es tu meta poder?
Meta poder es leer terminaciones sencillas.
Palabras sencillas, muy bien. Vamos a practicar el día de hoy la lista. Si dices la palabra con decodificación, es decir, por partes, debes leerla nuevamente hasta que tengas fluidez, ¿de acuerdo? Muy bien, puedes comenzar.
Tomaría.
¿Qué dices entonces nuevamente para tener fluidez?
Tomaría.
Muy bien.
Serviría.
¿Cómo la lees con fluidez nuevamente?
Serviría.
Muy bien.
Dormiría. Dormiría.
Muy bien.
Empezaste. Asustaste. Correría. corregiste, saltamontes, encerraba, enfriaba, enseñaba,
Muy bien.
calentara.
Muy bien, vamos a parar acá. Todos los días cuando te toque leer en español, tú utilizas unos minutos para practicar estas palabras con terminaciones sencillas hasta que puedas leerlas siempre con fluidez, ¿ok? Sin tener que repetirlas. ¿Estás lista? Ok.
So you can see during that short conference,
Ok, Sofía, ¿cuál es tu método?
Sophia brought with her ENIL folder that holds her current reading level, a specific power goal that she's working on. It includes word lists that she's working on that are focused on that power goal. It includes strategies that she can use when she's meeting with the teacher and when she's working independently, and some just simple notes that she's taken and the teacher's helped her with to help achieve her power goal. And during that progress, you can see that it's ongoing. It's a quick conference, but in there, the teacher was able to assess where they're at with those specific words, provide specific feedback for the student, and then the student then takes that, applies that to their application time, to the independent learning, and to their small group that they're going to move on next. And now I'll introduce Jamie Carmichael, who's our literacy coach at Higher, and she'll take us through some of the resources and how this tool makes our students independent learners.
Thank you. Yeah, we are very fortunate to have ENIL at Higher. It's been a really important resource. One thing that I love about it is that it connects to the standards. And it's not just an assessment, a benchmark assessment, it's a formative assessment. So it's something that guides the teachers. And the main resource that Mark shared before was the school pace, which is the digital resource for teachers. So we can track the data, they can write comments. We all have access, so if I'm in the classroom working with a student, I can add the comments as well, and the teacher can see that as well. So we can continue to support the students all together as a team. So some of the resources that we have that include is one of them, you'll see we have 2 first graders that are using the ARC bookshelf. So these are digital books that are at their ENIL levels. So they have opportunities to be reading at their Just Right books. Those were some of the quotes that they said. One of the students says, "Mis libros justo para mí están en el nivel verde." So she knows what level of books to be looking at and to be reading, and the goal, they each have a goal, and so the goal is included within those books. So if they're reading books and working on fluency, that would be included in the book, especially if there's specific 1-2 foundational skills. If it's like 2-syllable words, those will be included in that specific level book. And then also we have Parker, who says, if I go to the yellow tab, I can find my Just Right book. So they know exactly where to go, and that's where they're practicing those. We also have regular books, which is nice. But it's nice to have the digital, especially with things going on. It's nice to have the digital resources. So but we also have the books. So these are different levels, and like I said, they match the goals, and so they're able to complete those standards and those goals when they're reading these books. This is also our resource for our guide. So this is what the teachers all receive, and they do benchmarking to determine what level, and then they do some cold reads. So they continue to do that to determine what level they're at and if they have achieved their goals. Another important resource is the ENIL toolkit. This is something that we've just started, so we're still kind of exploring. But what's nice about it is it has the specific lessons for the goal that the student is working on. And this is what the student sees. So if you see, I just recently was trying out a toolkit. This is the book that the students were reading. And these were some resources. So they get the same resource, but they also see it here. Well, I can teach the lesson that's here. So they're really good resources because they are very specific to the power goal. Once they reach that power goal, we want to get them to the next goal. That's the importance about ENIL, is that it's not just, I want to get to that next level, it's what specifically am I going to do to get to that next level. And then the last one is the Tarjeta de Destrezas, which is their skill card. This includes all the power goals that are included in that level. What we do is we highlight what their goal is, we write the date, and then when they meet that goal, we write the date here, and also make sure that we're celebrating. That really engages the students to get to that next goal. And then there's also, depending on if they have like a word list to practice, they also have these opportunities. So when they're working independently, they can be practicing this as well as reading the book. Can we go to the next slide? And this is just kind of why ENIL from 2 of our 3rd grade students. And one thing that they really liked was how it helps them to know what their goal is, so they have a focus, as well as the goal helps me because I can practice and improve my reading.
Okay, any quick questions or reflections you'd like to share?
Mr. Como.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, just real quick. So the power goals essentially are established, but how each student achieves those goals, that might be individualized? Is that correct?
There's for each power goal, it depends. There's a specific skill they're working on, and we have resources to help support the students in that power goal. They may be working in different texts to achieve that goal, but this is uno rojo, so the words are the same that they'll be interfacing with within that power goal. So they are similar, but how a student may achieve that may be a little different. They may, focus on the ARC bookshelf. They may use text to help support that. But when they confer with the teacher, it will be a similar format. The same words they'll kind of review and show that their comprehension within and fluency within those words to reach those goals.
And then I'm assuming that, students who perhaps are moving through the goals faster, and there's others that might need a little bit more time. How does that work, and how do you allow that pacing to happen?
Certainly, yeah. So the power goal is assigned to each individual student, so that's their power goal. The students may have a similar power goal, so they may be grouped together to help focus that. But like you said, some students may move at different pace through those. So that helps the teacher within that framework to make sure that they are, giving extra attention or giving extra instruction in a lesson if a student isn't moving forward to the next level. And it might be reading engagement. Maybe they're not engaged during the application time. Maybe they're not reading outside of the classroom. So it's really looking at an individual child and how they're progressing and figuring out a plan to move them forward. And that'll happen during that conference or in the small group instruction.
So from a teacher perspective, how many small conferences do they have in a day? How's that kind of look?
Well, they create a schedule. So if I have 20 students in a classroom, the goal is to meet with each student at least once every 2 weeks. With a struggling reader, I may meet with them more often, maybe twice during that time period, but they create a schedule to make sure that they do it. And you saw that conference, it's probably about 2 to 3 minutes. So there's time to create that within that when the other students are working independently and applying their skills.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add?
Yeah.
So one thing that's nice about this ENIL toolkit is this is for small guided groups. So if we have students that are at the same goal and the same level, we can do them together. So that way, instead of having conference one-on-one, we can also do small guided groups to meet them as well. And at the beginning, we do a benchmarking, so they have to read a word list and also a cold read. And then there's comprehension questions, so that determines the level. And then once we have that level, after that observation, the teacher decides what their high leverage power goal is. So it might be the same as some of the other kids, but it might not be. But then it's very individualized. That's why I really like this program.
And one of the principles of the high leverage power goal is you want to be able to diagnose the skill that is going to most rapidly move a child onto their next reading challenge. And so we don't want to waste our time doing things that might be prescribed by the grade level or prescribed by XYZ intervention. We want to go exactly to the grain, figure out what it is that this child still has not mastered, help that child to master it, to move on. Because this assessment or instructional tool is also available from 5-year-old kindergarten through 12th grade, all of our secondary middle schools use it as well for the same reasons, to move children along in their Spanish literacy as part of their total biliteracy experience.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, back to the bilingual literacy. obviously it's new for me personally, but my question is when we're looking at children's literacy, developing reading skills and language skills, do we see, I assume we're striving for proficiency in both languages, right?
Yes.
English and Spanish. Do we see that the same techniques a child would use to learn reading, he must transfer that over, he or she must be transferring that over to Spanish as well, right? If they're doing English to Spanish or Spanish to English. So a proficient reader in English is most likely a proficient reader in Spanish too?
It's actually the reverse. We find that when students are proficient in Spanish, that is causal of proficiency in English, rather than the opposite way. Spanish is a very phonetic language, so it's very easy to learn to read it. However, for many of our children, learning to read it with comprehension is more challenging because of all of the vocabulary. What we have learned now, and what our standards have helped us to learn, is that students have clues within words that direct them to what those words mean. Some of those things are prefixes, like pre, re, de, in, and some of them are suffixes, and some of them are Greek and Latin roots. This is an assessment and instructional tool that helps us to detect kind of where a student might be and maybe what they have not attained mastery in, so that we can help to fill that little gap. At higher levels up, you're absolutely right that literacy skills will transfer between both languages. When they're very, very young, the languages are actually very unique and different. But we do know that literacy begets literacy. In fact, all of you, if we gave you something in Spanish to read, would be able to read it because you're fluent in English reading. So we're lucky for that.
So the next question I have is, let's say if a person's struggling to verbalize Spanish, a young child, not just a person, but a young child, developing learner, they may be fluent in reading it. Is that possible?
Totally.
But not comfortable in terms of speaking it because of the enunciation and all that stuff.
We recognize a lot of different domains of language, like listening is a certain kind of language comprehension, reading is a certain kind of language comprehension, and then writing and speaking are also very unique. And they kind of evolve differently in children. What we know is that writing is the last to evolve, which is why it is so important for us to have an emphasis on writing in all of our programs and across the curriculum. Very often, young children exhibit a lot of listening comprehension, and so they understand exactly what you're saying, but they respond back in English. And then slowly the speaking starts to develop. When the reading is happening simultaneously through that process, especially when it is around content that is meaningful to children, then their world develops and they have a real use and application for a language which is minoritized, or like not the majority language in the community. So yes. It's a trajectory for each child. Would you say that by second grade we're starting to see lots of spoken fluency?
Certainly, even some in kindergarten, native English speakers in kindergarten, by the end of their kindergarten year, you see some fluency and you see that development of the speaking. And like Dee said, every student kind of develops differently on that trajectory, but they all play off each other and feed off each other. And that's why, when we're looking at the pandemic in March and our learners not being face-to-face until September, they're not immersed in all that language. They're not immersed in that interaction with each other, which is essential to developing language, not only speaking and listening, but reading and writing.
So when I look at our unique year, right, we had a unique year. At the elementary level, us being face-to-face as much as we could, less quarantines, obviously, was pretty important to do language program because it's that face-to-face interaction that helps build those skills, right?
Certainly.
We do have kindergarten through fifth grade virtual dual language as well, and I would say that Melissa Yao and I have spent a lot of time in those virtual classrooms where there are two languages being spoken, and those teachers deserve Teacher of the Year award. They are absolutely amazing in their ability to cause language acquisition through a digital format. So I think we're still going strong. Hopefully our children will all be able to join us back face-to-face in the fall so we can continue the joy of learning.
Yeah, that's something we forget is that there's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot. There's some people, students that have chosen, families that have chosen virtual. And that's been entirely, educators and students that are successful in that unique thrust upon them situation, they deserve all the accolades we can give them in terms of turning that difficult situation into a success.
Certainly.
Mr. Baumgart.
Yeah, first, I got a couple of things. The first one I probably should have known years ago, but you just struck me with it. You said the levels of vocabulary between Spanish and English or Hispanic and English are very different. What can you compare those for me?
Well, this is a community where a lot of children outside of their homes are not exposed to the kind of Spanish that is spoken in school. And so most of our learners are completely dependent on the school environment and curriculum to be able to learn what we would coin like the academic language. And that includes our native Spanish speakers as well. We have lots of cultural resources within our community, but a lot of families aren't talking about photosynthesis at home, in anyone's house, right? And so the school-dependent learner in a partner language, which they may not hear outside of the school, means that what they are going to do as bilingual brains is always think like, how do I say this in English? And then they'll Spanishify it, right? So they'll say, well, I know this is gas. Is it gasa? Is it gasolina? And they'll do things like that, which are very typical things that bilingual people do. And so it's kind of like a ladder. You've got two ladders they start side by side, and then they become one ladder. And any movement in one is movement in the other. We've also talked about it in terms of if you took a kid's proficiency from like kindergarten through 6th grade, that for a bilingual kid, you wouldn't do this, you would do that. Because their language world amplifies in ways that are not linear.
Okay.
And they're very content and contextualized. So for example, we do all of our science in Spanish. So kids have a lot of language in science. And for those of you that are engineers, you can imagine why we've done that by design. We know that science language transfers to English easily. We know that our region needs people in sciences that are bilingual. And so we have found that to be very, very important for our students.
Thank you. The other question, totally different part here. You mentioned earlier at the beginning which schools are getting this, and you talked about the middle schools. Are we at all the middle schools now?
Yep,
Or
we
are
are.
you-
Yep, every middle school that has dual language. So that's Les Paul, Butler, and Horning also use ENIL. They're in their 2nd year.
Okay.
And they use that with their learners for the same purpose. They want to be able to diagnose any little reason why a child might not be able to excel independently in his reading so that they can diagnose it, address it, and help that kid to just get more independent access to text.
Okay, and we're adding the other bilingual schools, we're adding it into the other bilingual elementary schools
Yep.
now or next year?
About once a year. So Higher was the first last year. We added Bethesda this fall.
Okay.
And then we'll be adding either Banting or Hawthorne coming in next year.
Excellent, thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Mr. Bryan.
So, listening to what you're saying, listening to what Mr. Baumgart's saying, I have this process where I look at this dual language literacy challenge as adding another dimension for the child. For instance, Jesus and Jesus. It looks the same, but it's pronounced differently. And the G sound is different in English versus the difference in the sound in Spanish. So that's a whole different aspect of what a dual language child has to absorb as they're learning, going through this literacy structure. So I can see where it's like when you said it's not linear,
Yeah.
I can see where that happens, yeah.
Mark just shared in the green folder, there's one word called, I think it's ejército.
Yeah.
So you spell it the same way. You can say ejército, you can say ejército, and what's the other one? Y ejército. So 3 different ways of saying it, and the accent mark actually changes the meaning from a verb to a noun or something like that. So like students are really, we call it meta-linguistic awareness. They become very, very sensitive to how language is used, similarities and differences between languages, and they become very astute. You want to see that? It's a quick example. Pass it around? Sure. Well, as this is a Bright Lights experience, are there any last questions we can help you with?
Dee, I just wanted to say that the program really appears to set the stage to make a student an active participant in learning. and also really to give them ownership in the learning process. When the material is right in front of them, they know what they've just accomplished, what the next steps are, what their goals are. Instead of one way, it's really two-way. And it, from outside looking in, appears very impressive to me. And I can see why you brought it here tonight for Bright Lights. So I really want to thank you and Mark and also Jamie for highlighting this program tonight and sharing the success, because it's something most of us probably haven't been familiar with, and now at least we have an understanding of what the program entails. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
You need this tomorrow?
Yeah, Kenzie needs that tomorrow.
I'm actually meeting with her tomorrow, so yeah.
You're being efficient and preparing.
Yeah.
Well, you had some time before the meeting.
And extend our congratulations to the staff too that are
Yeah,
working on
it's
this
been a lot of hard
program.
work and a
because-
good journey, and it's really helped us to target instruction and help grow our learners.
And I will really just put in a plug for Mr. Schneider, has been with us every step of the way in every single training, professional development, clearing the path, clearing any barriers to teachers. I mean, he is absolutely 100% supportive of helping teachers to make this come to life for their kids. And so, you don't always have an administrative leader who is also an instructional leader, but the teacher and the instructional quality around ENIL wouldn't be in place without his leadership. So thank you to Mark and to Jamie for bringing her tremendous expertise.
Thank you again for being here. Have a good night. Okay, next this evening, we move into our action items. First action item, approval of our Teaching and Learning Committee meeting minutes from our February 2nd, 2021 meeting.
Can I move for approval of the minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Baumgart.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Roddy. Any questions, discussion, changes? Seeing none. All those in favor of approval of our minutes from February 2nd, 2021, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes Stacy 5-0. Thank you. Next this evening, our next action item is approval of an overnight field trip request.
So as we bring in Mr. Riley and Ms. Beadle for the post-8th grade trip, I just want to mention to the board for your information, last month you did approve the FBLA Nationals trip in June of 2021, that they perhaps would go to Anaheim for that FBLA Nationals, and they did decide to go virtual. So I just wanted to let the board know that you approved it, but that the Nationals will be held virtually. So it's just a matter of information for the board on that. So tonight, so it's pretty self-explanatory, right? But Dave, do you have anything you want to say to urge the board to vote?
It's just one of the more traditional field trips. It's just an amazing opportunity, and every year they come back and have glowing things to say about it, and some things that I don't even anticipate they get out of the trip, they come back and they're just blown away by the experience every year. So I've had the privilege to do it a number of times now, and looking forward to getting the ball rolling again next summer once hopefully all this stuff is over with.
Mr. Baumgart.
Sometimes I'm a little bit leery about some of our trips, but not this one, because if there's anything that I think we can really gain from is history. And history in Washington, D.C. is, until recently, got a very positive history. And hopefully, but you're looking at this another year out, right?
Yes, this would be for next summer, not this upcoming summer.
I'm anticipating things will be much calmer then, so that's one of the things you might want to be paying attention to. Good parents will be as well. So with that, I'm going to move for approval of the field trip, of this field trip.
Second.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roddy. Mr. Baumgart? I just had a comment or a question. I've been to Washington, D.C. a few times, and the one thing that I take away from my trip there is when you see the monuments at night, when you take a night tour. And if you've never done that, I would encourage you to maybe consider that. You get a whole different perspective of each monument at night than you do during the hustle and bustle of the daytime. And those images just stay in my head and very memorable. So just a suggestion.
Yeah, we usually try to work it in there, like the Air Force Memorial at night looking up, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, definitely.
Anything else?
Just
Mr. Baumgart.
One other question. It just comes to my mind from something I was able to visit, the Arlington Cemetery. Is that part of the trip?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, because that's
touching. We usually have a group take part in the wreath laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of the approval of the Washington, D.C. Field trip, June 16th through the 19th, 2022, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes, Stacy, 5-0. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work and planning as well. Moving on this evening, we are into our discussion information items section. The first item we have environmental education update. I think we have Rachel Herman here tonight, possibly Erica Yoss, K-12 environmental education coordinator, and Rachel Herman, our director of secondary learning, to provide us with an update on the Waukesha Environment's education program that's celebrating its 45th year this year. And just all of the wonderful experiences that this program has given to our students and community over the years. A lot of memories from most of us that have been on those trips or know of someone that have. So we look forward to your presentation tonight, and welcome to our community.
Thank you. So yeah, my name is Erica Yoss, and this is my 5th year with the environmental education program, but it has been around for 45 years now. Started out in the old Harvey Phillip building, and then when that became unsafe for habiting, they moved us over to the E.B. Shirts building in a partnership with the city. So I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about our program and some of the really cool things that we're doing right now. So our mission and vision, we decided this was a great time to take the opportunity to go through our mission and vision and figure out what do we really want to be doing with students. And our goal is that it is nurturing students to want to be caring about the environment. We're not forcing them, we're not telling them. There's a really big difference between environmentalist and environmental education. We want students to be outside having fun, because if you enjoy nature, you're much more likely to want to preserve nature. So in the last couple of years, we've had a bunch of changes curriculum-wise to our program. We really wanted to focus on connecting directly to the science curriculum in the elementary. And when March of last year hit, we had to do a pretty big switch and figure out how can we continue doing environmental education with students without being able to see them face to face. So one of the things we've done is we have been doing virtual field trips for our students. You can see in some of the pictures we have 4K all the way through 5th grade students. We live stream with them. We show them our animals. They have the ability to ask questions through the chat. And we have full lesson plans for the teacher. So while we might only come in for a small amount of time, we have developed the labs and the lessons that the students can do with their teachers in class, and we can send the materials there for them. We also started doing weekly newsletters for all the teachers, K-5 last year during the spring, and then once the fall started, we broke that out to a K-12 newsletter focus, lesson ideas, resources, and frankly, just to get kids outside. We knew when we had students at home virtually, they were at home and they didn't have their recess and they didn't have times to go outside. So we provided activities they could do at home with their families, as well as with their classes. In the vein of getting kids outside, with school coming back full-time K-5 and then hybrid in the fall with the secondary, we knew we wanted to take advantage of the fact that teachers wanted to be outside and give kids mask breaks. And we figured, how can we help? And how can we promote those outdoor classrooms? So we came up with a sit-upon kit, which I don't know if anyone's ever been to Girl Scout camp, but that's what you build when you're at Girl Scout camp. And it's something you sit upon. And it's what we did is we sent classroom sets of foam squares, as well as pick and save grocery bags, which we bought at bulk through their supplier, and duct tape. And the students could make their own sit-upons that they could then hang in the classroom and carry outside with them. And it was amazing. We had about 40 different classrooms take advantage of it in the elementary, plus about 150 kids at the middle school build them. So we were getting kids outside more effectively. We also didn't want just this to be a temporary outside thing. We wanted to build outdoor classrooms that would continue beyond just COVID times. So we partnered with the city forestry department and had them help us bring logs that they would be getting rid of and splitting into mulch anyways to the schools so that they could have these outdoor classrooms around. These are pictures from Rose Glen where students are using it as reading, but we're finding that students are using them for math lessons, for science lessons, for reading, for all sorts of different purposes to learn outside. We also wanted to bring some of our program that they would normally do with us permanently to their classroom. So we built classroom kits that could either stay there permanently or were things that they would check out with us. So we have things like bird feeders where students could then watch the birds come to their classroom window. We provided the seed, we provided the bird feeders so that the nature was coming to their classroom, as well as things like shelter building, where we literally sent the sticks and the pine cones and things that they could do in their classroom and connect it to their science lesson. Another exciting thing that we're starting now is we are building model classrooms for outdoor education, and we are starting with Randall STEM next school year. They are building this really beautiful outdoor classroom space with a composite deck. So we are partnering with 2 classrooms, one primary and one intermediate, where we will do direct coaching support and lessons with them on how to effectively use their outdoor space. It's not just for science. You can do all of your traditional core classes outside on that place. And the project I'm currently working on that I'm very excited about is a greenhouse out at the EB Shirts facility. So it is a way to take what we're doing and give more space and also extend our time outside. So we already have 3 garden beds out there that we've been working on and building, but this greenhouse will allow us to do a whole lot more. We will be working with the CTE program to see how we can work with our foods classes so they can understand the whole cycle of not just food just comes from the grocery store, where is it coming from? With the Wi-Fi capabilities that we brought out there a few years ago, we can actually live stream directly from our greenhouse so they can take pictures every day and see the growth. We're also connecting with the Hope Center so that not only will we be able to provide food for them, but we can actually provide starter plants for them to use in their own garden. So we're allowing our students to have a deeper community connection with this project. We are not completely done yet. We've passed the first 2 steps of Park and Rec Board and other boards, and we go to Plan Commission at the end of this month, and then we should be good to go for building it this summer. And then finally, I just wanted to end because we are celebrating 45 years, which is a pretty big deal. And while some things have changed, a lot have stayed the same. So you can see in the picture on the right, that is from 1979 out at Lapham Peak, which is we still bring 4th graders to, but these are middle schoolers. And then on the left is from last year when we had students out in the near the Fox River. That's actually not the river. That is the flooding that we had last year, if you remember. And it had come up about 100 yards onto the green space, and they were collecting critters and doing those things there. We are always on top of technology. I don't know if anybody remember Alpha Smarts, but in 2001, we had Alpha Smarts at our program, and students were using them to type their notes. And on the right, you can see those are our first graders who, when they come into our diorama room, use the iPads to take pictures of the different critters they find and then place them in a book creator file to sort them into the right habitat. And then finally, we always have had amazing and engaging educators who really care and work with our students. No matter what we throw at them and what changes, they have adapted. This was a group of people who, when I started 5 years ago, didn't use Gmail, didn't know Google Calendars, and now they're building virtual lessons to share out with everyone. So they have been an amazing, amazing team to work with. And finally, just thank you to the board for always supporting this program. It's something that we know we're super lucky to have here in Waukesha. Most districts don't have their own environmental ed center, so we are internally grateful that we're able to continue.
Comments, questions?
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't really know why I'm sitting here, because I think my name accidentally got put on this presentation, because as you can see, there's a saying, right, in leadership that hire the right people and get out of their way. And Erica is very humble, and she won't say this, but like everything that you're seeing on the screen from the greenhouse, which was her baby this year, comes from her saying, like, I have this idea, and what do you think? And so just a huge testament to her work this year and in past years. So kudos to her. I needed to say that publicly.
It's all right. We love ideas. Eric, a couple questions came to my mind as you were talking about this, and it relates to other connections that maybe you're making or maybe you're not making. One is the outdoor classrooms. A number of our elementary schools have added classrooms outside, and I don't know if they're used for much of anything or not. So maybe you can...
Yep, so that's part of what the model classroom will be through Randall. So they'll be the model not only for me to help them, but to share out to everybody else. So that they can say, well, at Randall, this is what we did, and then other schools can then follow their lead and learn from them.
Yeah, because sometimes I think they're just sitting idle.
Sometimes that happens, yep.
And adding to that, the concept of a greenhouse. Butler's had that, and I don't know if it's still there or not. Probably got knocked over last year. But, you know, they had a house out there.
Yes, the Quest program, when Robbie LaRue was there, he started that greenhouse, and they did use it. I don't believe it made it through the construction phase.
It was in the wrong place for that.
But yes, that is something that they did do there.
Okay, then one other thing, and I don't know if you were involved in this 3 or 4 years back, maybe, when we heard at one of these meetings about partnering with the recycling and the water departments, some work we've done there. Is that still going on, or is it?
Yep, absolutely. Our curriculum is still a collaboration with those, with Carroll University and Waukesha County. We still have that cooperative group where we build curriculum and professional learning for the entire county. We actually presented last year to CISA and are starting to spread our program to other groups.
Great, because you were right when you said this is an important program for our kids to be understanding what's going on outside of the buildings. And
yeah.
I appreciate this very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Bryan.
So 45 years, what year was the program started?
1976.
1976. Well, I wasn't on the board then, like you, Mr. Baumgart. Obviously, I had that set up.
Good one.
Yeah, it started with Mr. Vitale.
Yeah, so I was going to mention Mr. Vitale, and I know quite often he was credited with launching the environmental education program. I've always enjoyed it because to me it's applied science. But I think a nice thing would be, you know, here's our environmental education program, and here's the timeline from 75 to 2021.
Yep.
Right?
We are working on that actually because the city is also celebrating their 125th, as I'm sure you are aware, and we are doing a joint celebration out in October as part of that. So we will have that whole timeline and presentation done for that.
Yeah, I think the other part is, you know, we have the Mars program going on where and we have a robotics program here as well, but I think it'd be interesting to have little kids think about if they could put a robot on Earth, what would they look for environmentally? Mm-hmm. That'd be an interesting concept. But just because things are so, we've evolved so much since then in terms of the tools we have. Show them what a vacuum tube looks like and what a resistor looks like.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Como.
So I was in 8th grade when this started, so I missed out on the fun in that first year. But I did go to Saratoga School, and Mr. Batali taught there, and there were probably some precursors to the program that I know we were involved with. And it's always exciting to watch students learning outdoors. And what we forget, we wouldn't have our indoors if it wasn't for our outdoors, right? All our resources come from the outdoors. And it's really cool to see the kids getting outside and engaging in learning and understanding their environment. And what I've found over the years, whether they're my kids or they're my neighbors' kids, when you ask them after they graduate from high school, what are some of the highlights? This program comes up quite frequently. So what you're doing in it, and the reason why I just make that statement, what you're doing in it has a lasting effect. It has a high impact on our students. And we do need to take care of our world, and so we need to have our kids interested in the world. And so thank you for all the efforts that you put forth.
Anything else? Do you invite other districts to either come and see what is going on here in Waukesha or participate in activities or events?
We do. So part of that collaboration that we were just talking about was part of that, like spreading the word of what we do. From a space constraint, we don't have a ton of other districts that do come to us just because we have 10,000 kids coming to us. It's harder to fit them in. But we do, and we actually offer professional learning through the county where they come to our program and see what we're doing and we teach them how they can build it themselves and take it with them.
And then outside of students, do you have participation from the community, like community members?
We do a little bit more limited just because of the need for like background checks and all this if they're there with us. But we partner with the city and the county, obviously, but we also partner with and I'm blanking on the name, the plant group. Somebody really mad, the ones who do the flower sale, they like plant the flowers downtown. Can't even think about it. With them. I'm going to remember as soon as I walk out, don't you worry. But yeah, we do. We have a lot of community members who come in through that. And a lot of it is actually the people who were part of this as students and they come back and they want to volunteer. We work a little bit with Carol and some of their pre-service teachers who come and volunteer and do some of their work with us there as well.
Mr. Bryan.
So the 45th year will be the upcoming school year, or is it this school year?
This school year.
This school year. This school year is like not the greatest school year.
It wasn't the year to celebrate, but that's okay.
So it would seem to me like we have a lot of things to catch up on next year. So our celebration should go over into next year.
Yes.
And we're most likely going to have sufficient funds to expand something like this going into next year on a one-year basis, so we can celebrate the wide range of environmental opportunities we have here in our school district, all the way out to the planetarium and all the things that we could be doing more of for 1 year just to celebrate environmental education. I'm hoping that Jody will get really excited and say, hey, yeah, here's something maybe we should be doing next year. Yeah.
She knows I like to ask for money a lot, so I'm happy for that.
Yeah, and if she has a problem getting money, just talk to Darren Clark. He has a checkbook.
Good to know.
Mr. Como.
Just out of curiosity, how did you choose Randall STEM to be kind of the model? 'Cause there's so little green space. I mean, I don't think of, my kids went to Randall. It's like there's like almost no green space.
So honestly, that's part of why. They came to us with a proposal of they're building this thing and what do we do with it? And we wanted to show that outdoor education can happen anywhere, especially because we have a lot of students who at home don't have a lot of green space. And we wanted to to really highlight that outdoor education and being outside can happen anywhere. So they are just a really great starting point, and they want to. And I'm going to start with people who are really excited and ask and want those opportunities.
Sure.
Anything else? Erica, this program is obviously a gem in the school district of Waukesha, one of many. And under your leadership, I think it's only getting better. It sounds like you're doing some really great things behind the scenes to continue to evaluate and improve the program. So I want to thank you for all your time and extra efforts into leading us into the future. You're doing a great job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being here.
I'm going to be back. I'm just going to go get the other people for the next part.
Our next discussion information item this evening involves the K-12 Social Studies update. We have presenters tonight, Dee Garcia, our Director of Multilingual and Global Education, Rachel Herman, our Director of Secondary Learning, and Melissa Yao, our Director of Elementary Learning. Welcome to all of you.
Good night again. How is everyone? We are going to give you just a quick update in our progress on K-12 social studies. As you might remember, the new Wisconsin state standards were released in the winter of 2018-2019, and we have been slowly working through building coalition around those standards towards the work that we'd like to talk to you about tonight. As you might remember, we developed a social studies vision to be able to support the work that we are impending. And the statement you have before us comes directly from the state of Wisconsin, and we've integrated it into our main vision to focus our work around integrating our standards across a variety of social studies disciplines on a foundation that we have found through inquiry. And so the student themselves will be engaged in a very different experience in the social studies classroom as they are leading and guiding their own learning.
So at the elementary level this year, we have moved towards having a representative, at least one representative from every one of our brick and mortar buildings as well as Achieve. This includes representation on top of a classroom teacher. We also have a few coaches on the team, ESL teacher leaders, as well as special education teachers. We have representation across all grade levels, so K, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And we, since November, have been getting together monthly for an hour, and then they have an hour of outside work that they are doing in preparation for our learning of the meeting. And I can't say enough about what this group of educators has already done. They're taking this work very serious. They're excited. They're very thoughtful. And so they have come to the meetings ready with the learning, engaging in the learning. And then on top of that, many of them also chose to be a part of the pilot that we have going on. And our monthly meetings will continue throughout the year and moving forward into our years down the future. So what we want with this team is they will be serving as the leader in their building and making sure that information is going back and forth between what we're learning, any communication. We're following the format that's very similar to what we do in science, as well as having a representative in every building. So very excited about this team and the work that they are currently doing and into our future.
So you might remember the past 2 years, we've had a very large district group that was K-12 and included administrators. We have since broken those groups down into 2 smaller subgroups, one representing kindergarten through 5th grade and the other representing grades 6 through 12. And the work that we're doing and that we're situating for our staff is very similar across the K-12. It just is in a very different time and space based upon the shift in leadership really at secondary that we have been able to experience. So I wanted to go over with the Teaching and Learning Committee some of the topics that we have been discussing in terms of social studies learning for our staff. So we reinitiated our elementary team in November. We brought them together across all of the schools, as Melissa said, and we basically introduced them to the responsibilities, the ask that we would have around their learning and their leadership, and presented a flow of work, at least preliminarily, for the next 5 months. In December, we got into talking about the shifts in the social studies that the state of Wisconsin is asking us to explore with our teachers. The Teaching and Learning Committee needs to know that in 2022, our students will be evaluated based on the new standards, and so we will be working steadfast to make sure that our practices lead towards proficiency of our students. Inquiry is very important in the area of social studies. And so we started there in terms of our staff learning because it is somewhat of a switch, but yet not really. We do employ inquiry-based practices in the areas of comprehensive literacy and in science already. And so our teachers at elementary really have a nice foundation in understanding their role in supporting learners to ask questions, seek answers, use evidence, things like that. Also in December, we garnered support from our teachers to participate in a pilot. Melissa and I worked last spring also with Dan Kieser in looking at some instructional resources that we felt would support the standards in the state of Wisconsin, and we kind of narrowed it down to a very few. And we have an opportunity to pilot that one of the resources. And so we wanted to get our staff buy-in in December. In January, we brought in the representative from Teacher Created Instructional Materials called TCI, and we began to train our staff in how to use those tools as a short pilot. In the meantime, we also worked on building out for our staff the concept of an inquiry design model, which is a model for framing out how units of instruction will be designed so that we don't end up with a situation in which someone might feel that they need to page through a book and a text and go from A to Z, but rather how they make critical decisions about what is included. The inquiry design model, as you might recall from previous opportunities to speak to you, is really founded on students being able to ask questions, and ask questions that are really relevant to their lives, as well as relevant to the social experiences that they are having and the standards themselves. Students tie that compelling question, their opportunity to answer that question, to their summative assessment. And so what we hope to do is have compelling questions that allow students to answer that question in a variety of ways, and that they're able to garner enough evidence from a variety of tools to be able to make claims for and against, or make claims about how sometimes conditions are right, sometimes they're not, all of the things that they would do as they become adults. And then finally, we are always looking for opportunities for our students to be able to extend their learning beyond the classroom so that they are engaged civically. Young students, that might mean talking to the mayor or even the superintendent. Older students, of course, will be engaging very differently in extending their learning in the community. In February, we began a conversation around the importance of sources. Right now, in an elementary classroom, the teacher is a lot of the source for student learning. The future that we dream of places sources, primary sources, photographs, texts, documents right before students, and allows them to revise those sources to be able to extrapolate their own opinions and evidence for their claims. We also talked about the importance of planning for instructional opportunities and activities that build student skill to be able to use maps, to be able to read photographs, graphs and tables, all sorts of things. As we move into March, we will be presenting with our team Act 31, which is the Native American Indian Act in Wisconsin on tribal sovereignty. We will also be touching on environmental education. Our teachers will get more practice with sourcing And we will be reviewing our survey on the pilot of the TCI materials to determine next steps. Next slide, please. These are just a few photographs from some of our classrooms that are piloting. You can see active student engagement, lots of movement. On the right-hand side, you can see the integration of Blackboard, which is a major goal in our district this year. The pilot started early February and will commence on between the 8th and the 12th of March. The survey that we are gathering from our staff will give us an opportunity to really reevaluate where we want to go next and whether or not we will be before you next month making a recommendation or not. So that is kind of a wrap-up of K-5. Melissa, would you like anything else to say? Good, okay. So then Rachel can take it away.
Yeah. So at the secondary level, as Dee mentioned, we are moving a bit slower. We had a team that was also formed. However, due to some of the changes and some of the uncertainty that surrounded the start of the year for our secondary schools, we had fewer teachers who were onboarded into this process as to be expected. And so we started up in November. And I was really excited because despite it being a pandemic year, despite everything on the plates of teachers, we were also able to garner building representation from all of our sites. We were able to get representation from multiple course areas. So again, at the secondary level, we wanted AP teachers, we wanted teachers who taught the regular courses. We also have a team of administrators who are also serving on this team. So really excited about the number of people who are invested in this work. We also have East and eAchieve who are a part of our team. We are currently finishing up our book study, so we'll be culminating that actually next week. And so, as Dee mentioned, we are also aligning our instruction to an inquiry design model. And so we used the book, The Inquiry Design Model, Building Inquiries in Social Studies, as the grounding force that we wanted our teachers to know and understand. And so we are finishing that up on March 9th. Our teachers have been reading that book and then meeting monthly to have discussions about what does this look like in practice and action. One of the biggest shifts in these new standards is this idea of argumentation and students' ability to take that compelling question, as Dee referenced, and look at a variety of sources, both primary sources as well as secondary sources, and be able to, at the end game, argue for or against that compelling question. And so we're really moving away from, right, this mindset of the teacher as the source and I present to you the information, and instead, here's a compelling question, here's information around that compelling question, I'm going to guide you, right, with understanding that information, but at the end of the day, we want students, especially at the secondary level, when we talk about an end goal of civic participation, we want them to be able to formulate their own understandings. We want them to be able to formulate their own opinions. And so our teachers have been having incredibly meaningful discussion about what this means, what their current practice looks like in comparison to what the model would tell us it should look like. And it's been really insightful. That's like as far as we've gotten so far. And I say that not to undermine the work, because it might sound like, well, you've done a book study. It's really been a lot of meaty conversation. And so we are going to talk now about like where we're headed next. At secondary, we are not at the point where we're talking about piloting a resource. Quite honestly, when we start to talk about course specific, right? At secondary, we offer U.S. history, world geography. There is not one singular resource that we could look at piloting across that system that would be applicable to each of those courses. And so we are right now in the process of vetting what resources exist, but we're not close to yet talking about a pilot. So for our next steps, this is K-12, what we're looking at. First and foremost is we're looking at creating some focus groups comprised of a variety of stakeholders, including parents, guardians, staff, alumni, as well as community members, to provide our team with feedback around the social studies experience for students. So 2 years ago when this work first started, a team of staff, including administrators, drafted a vision for social studies that was aligned to the standards. It was incredibly robust work, but we know that we need to continue to gauge stakeholder feedback on what that looks like. Again, COVID kind of put a halt on those plans, so that's something that we need to pick up. We also want to hear from our community members, from, again, alumni, current students. What is their experience with our current social studies curriculum? What do they want to see more of? What might they want to see less of? And so just continuing to gauge that feedback. We're going to continue to unpack the standards and draft a scope and sequence for our K-12 model. So continuing to look at what are the essential skills, essential compelling questions that we're going to align to our K-12 social studies curriculum. We're going to be, in the very near future, compiling and analyzing our student achievement data as it relates to social studies. And so we're going to be targeting looking at our forward data. We want to make sure we have a clear handle on our baseline data. As Dee mentioned, that exam is going to switch a little bit, knowing that starting in 2022, it will be aligned to the new standards. And so really getting a gauge on where we stand now, so that as it shifts, we can see if our instruction has shifted and is now aligned to those new standards. We're going to look at MAP. While MAP does not directly measure social studies, we know that MAP does give us a measure of literacy, and the literacy skills that are measured on MAP are very much integrated and infused with our social studies curriculum. At the secondary level, we'll also be looking at our AP test scores as well as our AP course enrollment. So looking to see who's taking our AP classes, are we increasing enrollment there? And then lastly, next month, you will be hearing directly from our teachers who are engaging in this work, as they will be coming to present to you some of what they've been doing and how it directly has impacted their classroom practice, as well as just their perceptions of it. So they'll be joining us next month. Questions that you have for our team?
So Brian.
But then you mentioned state standards. One of the WASB resolutions this year that passed was essentially a demand that the state provide direction on what they call the indigenous peoples situation. Because there's a mandate to cover that, the state. But apparently there's a mandate without any real action by the state to provide direction on how this is to be covered. So when we receive state standards, and if they don't include that as part of their standards, then I would think it would make it more challenging for us to say, well, we should cover it, because we have to make sure we meet the state standards first. So how do we communicate the mandate back to the state and make sure they include that in the state standards for social studies? It seems like it's, they push it down, but we don't get the push back up. Is there a way that we do that as a district, or is at the professional level, how is that done?
We have actually worked with a DPI consultant named David O'Connor, who is a member, I believe, of the Winnebago Nation. And he has been an essential support to us. He has come into the school district to work with teachers. He's been available to the three of us for WebExes, phone calls, you name it. David is a person who is not only a staunch advocate, but is exceptionally trained in what he does. And I think the commitment for the Department of Public Instruction to appoint a person like himself with his skill set shows a commitment to support us in finding the way to make sure that we ensure issues of sovereignty and nationhood are part of our curriculum.
Yeah.
And I would add that the other rep that we work with at DPI does host meetings that happen a few times each year. Chris McDaniels is her name, where we as districts can provide feedback around those standards. So if there's something missing, if there's something that, this doesn't work practically, or that's where that feedback is provided then to the Department of Public Instruction. For example, the math standards that are recently released, Dan Paczynski, who is our math coordinator, he served on that team. So they're pretty good about soliciting feedback around what we need to maybe edit, change when that happens. So we do have that avenue.
Well, the danger of anything like this is you get bound up in the stuff right in front of you from someone's perspective. But if you look at Indigenous people as a global issue, then you don't get into issues of sovereignty and nation building and stuff like that. You look at globally what happens to Indigenous people around the world, not just our own. So that broader question is better to analyze without getting into the details. And you can see how we fit into the rest of the world relative to Indigenous people. So if we're trying to give something that helps us understand ourselves and where we come from globally, that should be part of our social studies curriculum.
You're going to be hearing in just a few minutes about our AP Human Geography, so there's going to be some great connections there, but I think we all agree that, yes.
Anything else? Well, thank you, Dee. Thank you, Rachel. And we'll look forward to having the team of teachers come and visit our committee next month. And also, Melissa, thank you very much, too, as well. Appreciate all your hard work. Our last discussion information item this evening is the AP Human Geography textbook adoption process. And we have Rachel Herman here, our Director of Secondary Learning.
Coming, so can we move?
Give us an update.
Yeah, perfect. I'll just share if somebody's okay standing with me. I'll stand and share the microphone.
That's fine.
Okay.
Oh. 3 mics and 4 chairs. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
And welcome to your committee, too, Rachel.
Thank you. All right, so I just have to get out of the last presentation I just gave and into this one. All right, so I thank you for having us tonight. So we have with us Jill Anderson, who is a social studies teacher at West, Jenny Pano, social studies teacher at South, and Jim Nelson, social studies teacher at North. And all 3 of these lovely people are here tonight. They all teach AP Human Geography. And we're here tonight to talk to you about an AP Human Geography textbook adoption. So I'm going to kick us off with our process of what we are going through as we go through this adoption. So we have first and foremost formulated a team of teachers. We've got each building represented. AP Human Geography does not run at eAchieve. It's not a course that we offer there. We have taken some time to analyze and discuss shifts in the course so the teachers can answer more specific questions if you have them about the new course targets, how AP has made some changes in that course from when it was first launched. We have researched textbooks that are recommended by the College Board to support the course, and then we've of course used our social studies vision to also guide us in our textbook adoption. We are collecting, so we have not yet completed this, but we are in the process of collecting student feedback around the textbooks that we are potentially looking to adapt. We will be working on pricing out those options, and then we'll be looking to come to you in April with the recommendation that we'll be proposing for then in May, you to hopefully vote to adopt. So that's kind of a rough version of what that process looks like. Jill Anderson is going to talk to you a little bit about the text. So we are going to be getting you copies so that you can preview them as well. All of the copies both come with electronic resources as well as a hard copy. One of the things we're surveying our students on is what their preference is, and it's pretty interesting to hear how many of our students actually prefer the big fat textbook. I have a 7th grader and he wants nothing to do with the big fat textbook, so it's interesting to hear our high schoolers, they want the print copy. But we will be getting you as board members copies of that. You're going to hear Jill talk. Some of these books have literally just been released. So like one of the books that they're considering, they just got in their hands yesterday. So we will be getting them to you as soon as possible. So I'll have Jill take it away with what the 3 books are that we are considering for adoption.
So one of the first books that we're looking at is from National Geographic, and as human geography teachers who are using maps and data on a daily basis, the idea of even having something like National Geographic at our fingertips is pretty exciting, especially with all of the resources that they have and can provide for us as well, to be able to use with our students for inquiry purposes and for getting a true view of things and events that are happening around the globe. Within the National Geographic textbook, they have lots of visuals and pictures for us. I love all of the maps that they have in there, along with questions that are in there to specifically prompt the kids to be thinking about the data and be thinking about the application of the concepts beyond just the nebulous idea of the epidemiological transition model. Now we actually have things where we can show how that works in real life. So those kinds of things are exciting for us. And then National Geographic also has in their books specific case studies where they can show what's going on in a particular community and how this is really happening at a local level for the students to make it more relevant and real for them. So that's one of our first options that we have is from National Geographic. Another option that we have is what we're just referring to as Hildebrandt as the lead author on it. What is really intriguing about this book, as well as the human geography one, is that it was specifically written to align to the AP College Board and their topics and expectations. So it like marches in step with what the College Board's expectations are. That's also really exciting for us because our current textbook does not do that, and we've found ourselves on several occasions scrambling for resources to try and figure out what is it that they're really looking for and how can we make this accessible to kids. So again, in the second textbook here, they have really written their textbook to make it appealing to readers. It's not long, lengthy paragraphs. There's lots of visuals to break up the text for you. They also have, which goes along with our AVID process, they've got the like focus question that you can then use the text and the subheadings to help you break down the information and know what you want to take notes on. And then when you get to the end of the section, they offer the kids, and what I've been doing with the kids is saying, okay, now you've got your main points in your summary, and I want you to go back and I want you to make sure that in your notes you can tick off that you've gotten all these main points in the vocabulary, and it's really worked well as a way for the kids to interact with their notes and use the text and keep referring back to it and not have it be a one and done type situation. So we are excited about this one as well. And then the last one is the one that we just got today. And this is the one that has the longer title, Human Geography, People, Place, and Culture. We haven't been able to super explore this one yet because we are just receiving it, but it's not written in as close of an alignment to the AP College Board. You have to skip around in the chapters a little bit, and it's not as clearly topic by topic focused, but it does still have, you know, the main models and things that we would need. It's a little bit more, I think, of a higher level college textbook, whereas the one I can show you is very much more think, student-friendly. So we will see what happens, and the students have been very fortuitous in providing their feedback along the way of what they're liking and how they're comparing it between the two. And my students, at least, are very excited about being part of the process, and I keep saying to them, you guys are the ones that are helping us decide. And so they've really taken it upon themselves to take on the task.
I want to mention, we did start out with, I think, 6, maybe 7, maybe 8. We started out with quite a few textbooks that we narrowed down to these 3 based on the criteria that I had listed in my first slide. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, well, Jill just took a lot of what I had to say and covered all of it, but so that's okay. It's hearing it twice, maybe, but maybe not all of it twice.
You still trust the best, though. No, not to be offensive. That's a great shirt, isn't it?
Thank you. A little off topic. I wear shirts like this every day in class, and there are kids who come to school and they go out and get them, and they come in, Mr. Nelson, I've got a shirt just like yours. So I buy them at Ragstock, which is a really low-end store in the mall. But
Affordable for kids.
it's affordable. I was stationed in Hawaii for 3 years, and I got used to wearing Hawaiian shirts, and this is kind of an offshoot if you want to kind of go that way. So, okay, back to business.
Sorry.
As far as the book goes, we do look at the College Board recommendations, and they do have some specific texts that they recommend. They don't have an exhaustive list. So we've looked at theirs, looked at the books that they recommend, and looked for books that seem to fit the bill and go along with what they've already recommended. And books that, as Jill mentioned, go with the rewrite. A couple of years ago, they did rewrite the curriculum for AP Human Geo, and it really, really helps if your books reference that. And the 2 main ones that Jill mentioned do go right down the line. They have the AP standards listed in there, and they align with our standards, with what we support as far as SDW and the social studies environment. They go right along with it, so it really helps a lot. So we've taken into account their recommendations, and we've added a few things that are so new that they haven't even got to them yet. As far as alignment, and Jill covered this pretty well too, all these books promote higher level thinking, and they have open-ended focus questions, and we used to call them web quests if you think back just a little ways, but they promote getting out and looking for answers. Here's a situation. The Human Geo book from the one from National Geographic is the one I've used the most so far, and they have actually a project at the end of every chapter that you can use. It asks for kids to formulate a question and go out and get resources. Look in your own community for answers to these things, and that supports higher level learning and the AVID curriculum. The fundamental teaching, the basics, the things you really want kids to do, not just memorize things, but maybe learn about some data, learn about some concepts, and then go look for real world examples of that. And I think, and the 2 books, the 2 that we've really considered so far, do that very well. So they do provide some guidance in that and some things for kids to look at. And I would also add that my kids have also been kind of excited about being able to pick a book. I told them the other side of that was that now somebody can blame you if they don't like the book. Instead of me, because I was on the committee that picked the original book.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I digress every once in a while.
We've been blaming you for a long time.
Well, some of you have students who have suffered through my classes. Both of yours. Okay. As far as technology goes, the 2 that we've looked at so far in some detail do have online resources. They're very helpful. There's online resources available to us, and there's also online resources available to students, so they can independently go and look at these things. Whether they have the hard copy or use the online version, they still have access. I believe whatever we buy, they'll still have access to the online environment, which is very helpful. I know that we loaded the online access for the Human Geography, National Geographic book in my class yesterday, and the kids are fine. They get on there, they use their iPads, they're fine with doing that. It's really easy to get at, and they like being able to, like playing with their iPads. Big surprise. So, as far as technology goes, though, I think we're all on this in lockstep pretty much about using the online resources that they have, and these books do have some really good resources. Vision for Social Studies for the School District of Waukesha, you're all familiar with this, and you actually saw it a little bit in I think the previous presentation. The books that we've looked at so far do support learning in the other social studies strands, and one of the things that I like about this course is if you have freshmen learning about other cultures, maps, the way people behave and why they behave in different environments, it sets the stage for everything else. It sets the stage for world history, U.S. history, sociology, psychology, everything else that we do has some relevance to this, and it really gives them a leg up to get started as freshmen. So I think these books do, and we're very concerned with supporting the other strands that we have here. And in addition to Avid, and then if you look through this in detail, it pretty much covers all that. We are doing a survey, and I think, have they already gotten a copy of the survey?
I'm going to click on it.
There is we're sending this survey out to students after they've had a chance to look at each of the books. If there's online access, how easy is it to use? And then just a real quick response as to what you think about this. Is it written over your head? Is it written appropriately for you? Do you feel comfortable with this? Are you getting something out of it? Is it increasing your understanding? And we're going to take all of these from all 3 high schools and just put them all into one big bucket and analyze that. It's totally anonymous, and it'll give us a real good idea across the spectrum of what the students think of the different books that we're looking at, so we can incorporate that into making a decision and a recommendation to you.
So again, I'm Jenny Pano, and I'm the AP Human Geo teacher at Waukesha South. And I guess just to begin, when I went to an AP Institute a couple of years back and learned that our current textbook was the book everybody uses, right? Across the country, I was like, awesome. And then I started to look at it and struggle with a lot of things. Without getting into any detail, I'm really excited that while getting a new book brings a lot of work, I have a daughter graduating from high school and off to college, and the summer will be very busy with this new textbook that we choose. But I'm really excited because we have so many great choices. We've all talked about how it's really a win-win. I mean, it's just a matter of picking the best out of the best. And so ultimately, we are, as we've already said, piloting these 3 resources that we've narrowed our choices to, along with student feedback that we feel like is really vital. Making the kids know that they're a big part of this. And I have a lot of students at South, I know for sure, who have siblings, right? At Horning and Les Paul especially, in STEM, who are coming to South, and hopefully they're not gonna, whatever. They care about their siblings. They know that this is an important process. These are not cheap. And so we're going to start to price them out. We're gonna obviously look at the hard copies, digital copies, what exactly will we need. But April, May, coming forward with our recommendation. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to come to the decision that we'll come to, but I feel pretty confident that we're going to be very prepared to do that. And like I said, I feel like any of these, even though we've looked at this one the least, I feel like any of these will be a great choice. So, and bring much, just a wealth of resources to our course that, as we've said, has undergone some pretty significant changes. And it's just exciting that we have these books that are so well aligned with College Board's course framework. The 7 units, not the jumping around as much between chapters, but it's just ease for kids and ease for us with so many resources. So that's sort of where we will be going.
Questions, comments? Mr. Baumgart.
You said you're going to get copies of the books to us. That's good. Along with that, would you be able to give us, heaven forbid I use the word a rubric, but what is it that AP expects us to be dealing with, okay? And then on an easier level, maybe in like 20 words or less, what is a layman's view on, what is a layman expecting when we talk about human geography? I mean, what's the ultimate objective of human geography in simple terms? Because I know that when we see the AP terms, they're going to be a little bit more complex.
Sure.
Right?
I'm going to have one of the human geography take that last question, but then I'm going to address the other two.
Thank you.
So human geography is going beyond just the concepts of what does the topography of the land look like. It's actually focusing more on how do humans impact the environment and how does the environment impact humans. And so where countries are developmentally with their industry, with their agriculture, is dependent upon the resources that they have in their country and what they are able to do with those resources. And then as a response to the environment that we live in, that also is going to impact our culture, our religion, our language that we use. And so it's the interplay of your environment that you live in with the people that are around you and how you feed off of those.
Stop right there. Thank you.
She could keep going, but
I know. But I said 20 words or less.
So I want to just address your question then about the textbook and AP. So all of the teachers have a common syllabus that they will submit to the AP College Board that AP College Board has to approve for that course to run. the board does not tell anybody, here's the textbook that you have to use, right? So they give a recommendation of here are some that would be aligned. What we have found in our preliminary work is, again, these books are like hot off the press, and they are very closely aligned to the new standards that were released. And so, I'm sorry?
Standards we're using here.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, AP College Boards, we don't create, we follow AP College Board. We don't create our own. And so those books, while 2 out of the 3 are not listed on that AP recommended text, it's not because AP doesn't recommend them, it is because they are that new. But they do align to AP College Board's curriculum. So we will be using, to make our decision, that criteria. We'll be using the student feedback. We'll be looking at, again, an alignment to AP College Board's curriculum. We'll be looking at their recommendations. So it's not like a clear set checklist that we have. It's a more subjective set of criteria. But as I talk to the teachers, we're kind of comparing like a Honda Pilot to a Toyota Highlander. Like, they're not bad resources. We're really getting into nitty-gritty details to make this decision. We're not comparing like a Honda Pilot to a Ford Pinto. That's not what these resources are. Do you drive a Ford Pinto? I'm sorry. I don't know if they do or not. Don't they like explode? So, right, like, I think that's the piece, because we can get really caught up in the details. These three resources, the big pieces, do they align to our instructional framework? Do they align to what the kids need to be able to know and do to be prepared to take that AP College Board test? And most importantly, can our students access them? These are freshmen taking this AP course. And so one of the conversations we've had a lot, and you heard the teachers talk about it, the visual representations in the books, the bold print, those are things that, these are freshmen. They are not college students, and so we need a textbook that is accessible for these kids to understand what is being taught. It's a college level course, and so those are really the 3 driving forces.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bryan.
Yeah, I'm glad you covered the grade level. As I recall, AP World History, when my daughters went, was like 11th grade.
Sophomore year is AP World History.
Sophomore?
Yep.
Okay. So it was early on. And at the time, both my children went to West, and Mark Grunsky was if anyone remembers Mark, he was the AP World History guy there, and it was the course that people took if they really wanted to work and do a lot during the summer. So what I've learned, being in Waukesha all these years and from where I came, is how much I didn't learn when I was in school versus what we can offer here in Waukesha. And, all our AP courses, our depth of opportunity that we give kids in so many different curriculum areas is really special, and it takes special teachers to deliver that. And I want to thank you guys for being those special teachers that work so hard to deliver what you give our children here in Waukesha. We took some heat here a little while back about kids' grades, and I mentioned about the worst grade my daughter got was maybe her best grade. Well, it was in AP World History. And it was her best grade. And for both of my children, I would say what that gave them, even though that wasn't their field of study as they went on to college, it was an emphasis for them, a significant desire to get out and see the world, to go to different parts of the world and see what's there. And so that spirit of discovery, and also in terms of the one that struggled, the learning how to study was very important, which is what AP World History gave her in addition to all those other things. So I'm excited about what you guys do across the board. I think it's one of the most important educational opportunities we provide our kids here in Waukesha. And when you think about, when you're thinking about science and math and all these other things, it's not like people think about how important social studies is as a core value for this district. And it's that important because we have great teachers that work really hard to deliver something really special. So I just want to say thank you.
Mr. Como.
So you're garnering student feedback, and I'm assuming one of the things that you're going to assess is you want to challenge the students. You stretch them a little bit, but you don't want to overstretch them. But you don't want to bore them either. So how do you assess that? How are you getting that feedback from the students?
We always say struggle, not suffer. And in terms of how we're, right, that's that ideal zone of proximal development. We want to stretch you, but we don't want you to suffer while you're doing it. I think the Google form itself is not going to give us that, so to speak, formative, right? Do we know? But these teachers are having conversations with their kids daily about these resources when they're using them. And so I'm going to kind of ask you guys to speak to how do you gauge that? Because I don't know that that's just something you gauge around a resource. I think that's something that you gauge daily when you're instructing.
So because it's a AP college level course, that in itself sets the bar pretty high for them. And then while we want a resource that would be challenging, as we said, we want it to be accessible, but then our role in that becomes providing them with the scaffolds that they would need to attain the material. And part of the way that we can do that is, so for example, in my class, they'll read a section the night before, and then when they come in, I have some guided questions for them to start working with a partner on. And as they're talking their way through the vocabulary, talking their way through the concepts, I'm listening to hear, where are you not making the connection? Where did you miss the boat on this? They can also get that when they're interacting with their notes and talking with their partner. Their partner can say, oh, I know, and can help to correct that thinking. But by me monitoring and going around the room, I can then fix the overall picture. Or if I know that it's a concept that's going to be difficult for them, I can preview the text with them. I can preview the concepts and say, here's what you're going to be reading about. Make sure you watch for these things. And then that sets them up for success in being able to access the text and the overall AP college level challenge.
I appreciate that, because I was wondering, how could you get that from a survey? I think you do have to dig in, you do have to witness, and you do have to see how they're going through this. And you don't necessarily want the students to set up the next batch of kids for failure, right? Let's pick the hardest one, the one we're most confused on. Not that they really would, but I'm glad that that's part of the assessment there, at least for this particular aspect. And I'm sure it's other aspects of your choices too, obviously. So, thank you.
Anything else? Well, you certainly have a big task in front of you, but with your enthusiasm and commitment from the teachers I see here, I'm sure everything's going to turn out as we would like to see it, and we look forward to having you come back to this committee in April or May to move us forward along this process of textbook adoption. So thank you to the staff, thank you to Rachel for the overview and the presentation, very thorough, and just I couldn't think of anything else to suggest that you're doing, because I think it's all being done and being done like it should be. So
Thank you.
we appreciate it. Mr. O'Brien.
When do we get our books?
Hopefully, 4 of them have arrived, so hopefully soon. Again, the teachers just got them yesterday, so soon, hopefully by the end of this week.
Awesome.
Are you going to audit all the classes, Chris?
I gotta read the books before I get my shots.
We'll give you a test.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening. We appreciate you being here. Rachel, I think you're done this evening.
I think I'm done, yes. Have a good night,
Yep,
everybody.
sounds good. Thank you. We move on to other business. Any recommendation for future committee meetings? Ms. Landish, I was wanting to know if sometime between now and the end of the school year, if we could get some form of an update from our 6th grade students and staff that are going to Blair this year, just to find out how that experience has been going, since it's such a unique situation. And I have no idea how things are going. I haven't heard anything negative, so I assume it's positive. But it doesn't have to be a presentation here, but just some sort of an update in some format would be, I think, interesting and nice to know how things are going there.
Absolutely. I think for the full board's benefit, we can certainly do an update. I'll work with Mr. Taggy, who's highlights from both the teacher's perspective and the student's perspective. Do it in a Friday update for you.
Good, good. But I've heard nothing negative, so I assume positive. And it's a very unique situation. I don't think it has happened in this district that a grade level has been at a school by themselves. So I'm sure they would have some valuable insight into that. Mr. O'Brien.
One of the, and again, these are always, what should I say, anecdotal, so it's not really, you don't know if it's true or not, but I get a lot of feedback lately. I don't ever get much criticism of what's going on in our secondary schools, in terms of how we do things there. But there has been significant questions about, the elementary situation. And as to whether we're getting, things are going as well in elementary as we believe they are. And because I get parents who are telling me they're not happy with what's going on in elementary. Like I said, it's anecdotal, but maybe it's something we need to think through and see when we're talking about our struggles with literacy. I think the real place to make sure we do very, very well at that is at the elementary level, as like dual language tonight went through. So I don't want to ignore this feedback from a few parents that I've had. Again, it may be anecdotal, but I don't think they would have a reason to tell me negative stuff unless they were really concerned. And it's just a few parents, but you don't hear parents speak up very often, to be honest with you. So,
Anything else from committee members? Okay. With that, our meeting is going to be adjourned. The next Teaching and Learning Committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 6th 6 p.m. here in the boardroom. Thank you, everyone, for your involvement and participation tonight, and have a good evening.